You have this this debt restructuring approved fully by the IMF. You have the Paris Club. You have India on board, but China is still dragging its feet. What can you tell us on that front? How do you expect to get them on board? What has to change?
If you look at the process that we have been able to achieve last 6 months after we reached a staff-level agreement in 1st of September, we have been able to obtain credible and specific financing assurances from all the Paris Club and non-Paris Club creditors on a very open, transparent and comparable manner. So that is kind of an achievement, because if you compare, it's a record time that we have been able to obtain this financing assurance from all our creditors. The next process is for us to complete this process and complete the negotiation of debt restructuring with both the official creditors as well as the commercial creditors. That process now has begun, and we have to make sure that we do it as soon as possible going forward.
So back to China, Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, has said she's not going to give up until these debt restructurings like yours get approved. Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary of the U.S., also singling out China and the need to get them on board. As I understand it, your president has issued a public letter over the past few months saying no side deals with creditors. So when you apply all that to China, again, what do you expect them to do, or how do you expect to get them on board, stop dragging their feet?
No, I hope, as they have done the right thing for Sri Lanka, giving us financing assurances last time, I think this is probably the first time China has given it that fast. Obviously, with the help of the IMF and other partners also helped to share information. We hope that China would, obviously China is a country that has been helping Sri Lanka for a long time, have invested a lot. It's best interest for China and Sri Lanka both to complete this process soon, and we can get back to repaying our debt service obligations sooner the better for both China and Sri Lanka. This is what we think. China will certainly support Sri Lanka. As they already expressed in public, they want to support Sri Lanka. We are confident that China will support, as they have done in the last time also in the process.
Governor, your country is also trying to balance the demands from local interests as well as global investors. What response have you gotten so far when it comes to bondholders for the proposed voluntary local debt restructuring that's happening right now?
Yeah, if you can remember, about a week ago, about a couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, I think, we made an announcement in public on a very transparent manner how we intend to make a contribution from local debt optimization, where we announced that central bank holdings of T-bills would be considered for some treatment. And in addition, there will be voluntary treatment for treasury bonds that is comparable with other treatments, so that we want to make our contribution from the local side. And also, in terms of our contribution, we have already made commitments with the IMF in terms of primary surpluses in the fiscal deficit, and also growth targets, inflation. All these things are our commitments. In addition, next step is to have some kind of domestic debt optimization. Then the sequencing is that after we announce that strategy, we are committed to announce our strategy by end of April. Then we will can continue the process with commercial creditors, asset bilateral creditors, to make it complete.
We just saw a U.S. judge denying Sri Lanka's request to dismiss a bondholder's lawsuit. Is that going to have any impact on the debt recasting efforts that you have ongoing with commercial creditors right now?
We have a parallel process with the once we announce the domestic debt optimization process, then that will give us more information to both commercial and official creditors, so that they can continue that process going forward. I think we have a parallel, we intend to go through the parallel track at the same time with commercial creditors as well as official creditors. And this is our plan going forward.
Now, there are things you have to do. You are moving on ahead on many fronts. You'll have to have in place for your first IMF program review. One of the things on the list is tax reform. And again, it's my understanding that there are some elected officials who are pushing back against some of the reforms that your government has made or is planning to make to ensure creditors, to ensure the IMF that your debt levels are sustainable once the debt is restructured. How do you respond to that kind of pushback from some within your own ranks?
Now, if you look at some of the prior actions, those are the most difficult reforms that government and central bank has implemented so far. But I see from the pain and the difficulty of those reforms, for example, tax increase, the electricity price adjustments, monetary policy tightening, and the fiscal expenditure cuts, all are very painful reforms. In my view, we have done most difficult reforms already. And but we can say, obviously, there are some opposition and kind of the pushback is coming from some of the affected parties, as we can understand. But we think we have made now, there's a better understanding of the general public in Sri Lanka on the need of these reforms and continuation of these reforms and get out of this crisis sooner the better. I think we are confident that we will get the full support from the public. And going forward, the next step is once we complete restructuring, after that we are going to see the benefits of this program, and then only people will realize what is needed and why it's important to go through this process. This is the only way that we can recover the economy going forward.
You know, one of the stories on our Bloomberg terminal today that caught my eye was that the Sri Lanka's had to delay local government polls because of a lack of funding. Obviously, there's a lot of sacrifices being made, a lot of putting on everyone. And you're dealing with very high inflation, recent moves to rein it in. Where do you see inflation going? Where do you see the economy going? Will these reforms slow the economy down?
Yeah, obviously, economy contracted by 7.8% in 2022 last year. But this year, we see as a recovery year, both in terms of growth, in terms of inflation. What we see from the central bank point of view, as a result of very tight monetary policy, already disinflation process started. And by the end of this year, we are confident we will reach single-digit inflation by end December this year. So we see that clearly disinflation path is clear projection that we will reach single-digit inflation by end of this year. And in terms of growth, obviously this year, first 2 quarters will still be a negative, but there will be a recovery in the second half. As a result, overall full year, we would expect some small negative contraction, not as much as IMF predicted 3.7%. We think we would end up somewhere like 1 to 2% contraction this year. And from next year onwards, we will move into a positive growth path next year onwards. That's what we think.